please welcome the incredible Elyse Archer.
Renee, thank you. This is so fun to be here. I love you. I love your energy.
Yeah.
I'm excited for the conversation.
I know.
Yeah.
You were on the show 3 years ago.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That is
A lot has happened.
easy. Yeah.
Well, how old is your oldest?
He'll be 4 next month.
Okay, so he was just a little nugget then when you were on the show.
Tiny. I know. It's so wild.
Yeah.
I've got the coffee cup that says the days are long, but the years are short. And I was out with some moms last night, actually, at a summer solstice beach gathering, which is such a Maine thing to do, by the way. And we were talking about that. And we're like, it is just so true. It is just so true in parenting and in many aspects of life. Right.
Totally. I was driving Noah, my youngest, to school yesterday or Friday. Anyways, in the last couple of days. And we were talking about this being his last week of school. And he looked at me, he goes, wow, that went by fast.
Oh.
And even him coming from a 10-year-old, I was like, yeah, I know, bud. It actually really did this year. I don't know what it was. It's just like everything was like fast forward in a good way.
Yeah. I feel that. I've been feeling this, maybe, I don't know if you have too, but like I felt like the energy in my business is moving so fast. And I've had moments where I'm like, things happened in an amount of time that it did not feel like it took. Like it should have taken longer for those things to happen. So I think we're in we can talk whatever you want to talk about today, but I feel like we're in an ascension. I feel like we're in a quantum leap. I feel like there's a lot of fast energy moving right now in people's lives and businesses. So it's a wild time, but a fun time.
It is. And I also think that we could like try to connect the dots looking backwards at coming out of the pandemic and kind of like the hangover we all had from that. This year, I know people woke up and they said, I'm done with all that. Like, let's focus. And also personally, but also in my group of friends, is the cutting of cords and the letting go and releasing of things, people, ideas, patterns that they were sick of, like exhausted.
Oh my
Just
gosh.
totally exhausted.
And you kind of have to wake up to it. And it's like, no one's going to make that decision for you. But last night when we were doing this summer solstice beach picnic and there was a sound healing and it was really beautiful. And I was just like, who do I get to be in this next chapter to hold and sustain and grow all the beautiful things that are coming in? And there were just certain patterns where I was like, you just got to be done with it. Like, how long are you going to let it go on in your life until you're like, it's time to be done? And it's once we make that decision and we become consciously aware of how we've been showing up that just isn't going to serve us, like things can move and shift. But I think there's just some patterns that it's like, even though it's not what we would choose, we hold on to it because it feels safe and familiar. And last night I was just like, yeah, like the version of me who I get to be in this next chapter, she's just not doing those things. She's not thinking those, it's not so much doing things, it's like thinking thoughts, right? And certain patterns of thought. So yes, I love lots changing and moving.
Well, and this is what has always drawn me to you. And also I had the honor of working with you. And you're in an industry, like from a 30,000 foot view, you're in the world of sales. And you're recognized by Salesforce amongst big companies as to the work that you do. But if you think about the person who we know to fill that role, isn't you. You bring this beautiful understanding of the feminine into running a business, into sales, and understanding that. And even now, because the women rising right now is crazy. The feminine rising, it is insane. Like the earth was cracked open and we're oozing out.
Yes.
Watch out. But also, I don't want to say the woke men, but the people who are always in their masculine are also starting to see the beauty, the prosperity, the health, the nurturing in the feminine, of which we all have.
Yes.
Whether you identify as a man or not, whether you are, in your masculine or not. And you bring this to the world in the work that you do. Also in a way that, you've introduced me to almost like the world of being a witch. Like the book by Healing the Witch Wound by Celeste Larson.
Yeah.
I read that and now I'm like a self-identified witch now.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for
but
you.
But so coming back to this feminine stuff, because I've always loved that part of your work. You were just sharing with me some of these incredible wins that some of your clients and people have gotten because of something so profound. So tell us about that.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my gosh. This is so fun. Thank you. And I love, by the way, that you're like, man, I'm owning it. Like I'm owning my feminine. I'm owning that witch energy. It's awesome. And I'll say too, Renee, for everyone listening, like I did not grow up with this stuff. I grew up in a super academic, high achieving, like left brain household. And so this has really been a journey of, I think, rediscovery in my own life and just following what feels true and what resonates. And there's been a lot of like breaking of belief barriers about how we achieve success and business results and financial results and how we can show up in our business in a way that produces success. But to your question before about feminine energy, yeah, I was sharing with you in the pre-chat just some of the women in our community, and when they learn to incorporate this element, how they quantum leap. And we had a woman, she's a financial advisor, and came into one of our programs, and within a month of just being in this material, 16x'd her income. She was like, went from a 2K month to a 32K month, something like that. She was like, how? I wasn't working harder. It was who I was being. Another woman just came in corporate sales, and I had spoken, I actually connected with her at a mastermind. And this is where you talked about like the conscious awake men who are wanting to learn about this. I had the best time. I got invited to speak at a mastermind for one of my my dear friends, former clients, Ian Koniak. And it's a group of like 95% men, like B2B tech sales professionals. And they wanted to know about feminine energy. I was like, I'd never envisioned a day where there'd be a whole
You're like, roll up the sleeves. You're like, where do we begin?
Yes, like masculine men, like high achieving, driven. And they were like, but wait, explain to us more about the feminine. Because I was talking about you never quantum leap from the masculine, you only quantum leap from the feminine. So I think that piqued their interest. They're like, okay, tell me more. But so one of the women in there, she ended up coming into our community, and we were just on a call this past week, and she was like, this doesn't seem like it should be so easy. She was like, she shut off her connection to her feminine for so long, and she's just starting to get back in there. And I'll speak in a minute about what that looks like if that's helpful. But she was like, there's just deals coming my way, like things that have felt hard that I've been grinding for so long are just showing up in my inbox, and clients are wanting to talk to me, and I'm signing bigger deals. And she's like, but wait, I'm not like following this perfectly structured masculine plan that I'd been executing and like grinding before. And she was like, wait, there's part of me that almost feels guilty, or like there's something wrong, or like I'm not working hard enough. So it's interesting, these like mind games we can get in with ourselves. I find myself doing that sometimes. But what I know, and I'd be curious your perspective on this too, like from lived experience, when I have brought in the biggest deals, the best opportunities, the things that are like, oh my gosh, career changing, it was not from grinding. It was not from hustling. It was not from being in burnout, exhaustion, overwhelm, which are symptoms of us being too in our masculine. It was from those times when I was open to receive, when I was grateful, when I was focusing on who I was being, when I was aligning with a higher frequency in my wealth consciousness in my business. And from that place, it's like things that, I don't know if it's Oprah said this, but someone said it. It's like, grace opens doors that hard work never could. And there's been a lot of grace that comes in those times. Not to say that we're not taking action. Feminine is not about not taking action, but it's about aligned action versus hustle, overwhelm, burnout action. So I know this is your podcast, but I want to hear your perspective.
You can totally interview me if you want. I keep thinking of one of my favorite quotes of all time by Stevie Nicks. She says, and I paraphrase, if you're gracious, you've already won the game.
Ooh. Oh, I like that.
And now I'm starting to understand what that means a little bit more.
Wow.
Right? Because yes, like in my initial understanding of it was just be nice and kind, say please and thank you. But now I'm seeing it in a totally different perspective.
Yeah. Wow. That's
yeah.
I just got chills with that.
I know, me too. I'm like, was there a beam of light that just came?
Yep.
But okay, so go back to ask that question again, because I was totally just it's like it's called the Teltec, they have a word for it called the metote. The metote is like when you have the fog, right? So you have the fog. So you think about after you get out of the shower and the mirror's all steamed up.
Yes.
You can kind of still see your reflection, but you can't.
Yes.
So the metote is the fog that gives you a disillusion, or it's the stuff that's blurring the vision of what's really right in front of you.
Oh, wow.
And sometimes I have that when somebody says something so profound and I'm getting these like downloads and I can't hear what they're saying because I'm like,
well,
so much noise.
No, this is so beautiful. So we were talking about quantum leaping from the feminine, right? Because masculine and feminine energy, we all need both, right? So we all need both. And masculine is structure. So in your business, masculine energy is going to be like your CRM or that like ninja spreadsheet that you use to pitch your clients for podcasts, which is amazing, right? Or it's like your sales script. So it's all the structure that helps support us in our business. But most of us, if we haven't practiced this, if we haven't been acquainted with how to leverage feminine energy, we exist almost entirely in masculine. And we don't realize it's like having a cup that's supposed to have water in it, but is completely dry. And we go to take a drink and there's nothing in there and we're parched. And so the feminine is about the being, it's about receiving, it's about embodiment, it's about aligning with higher frequencies and allowing in. So what and that's how we quantum leap. That's how these women were getting those incredible breakthrough results, is they finally incorporated feminine into their business. So, but it can challenge our analytical brain and our concept of how we have to work to achieve big business results. So I like to do a process we call checking our receipts, which is like, okay, let me look back on the biggest career wins of my life and be like, what brought those about? And was it burnout, hustle, overwhelm, or was it an element of grace and being more in that feminine? So I was curious for you, if you like look back on your career too, and even life too. It doesn't have to be career, but life. It's like the best things come. How do they come?
I think that's a great question, because I will say this: the things that I think were the biggest leaps weren't necessarily the biggest impact that I've created, but the things that I were the most proud of. Right. And they often end up being the things that I had such alignment with, but ended up being hard work.
Yeah.
That there were moments where it was a grind, 100%. Like self-publishing a book, this journey as well. Yeah. And winning award. Like I keep looking at this trophy on my shelf. I won the Phenomenal Woman of the Year award for all the entrepreneurs in my city.
Wow.
For the women. And when I look at that, and there was part of me when I actually was given the award, I didn't feel like I deserved it. Because like you said, in my head, I hadn't grinded enough to feel like I deserved it.
Yeah.
But that's not why I won the award. I won the award because I was just me.
Yes. Yeah.
I was just me.
Yes.
So when I think back of like my greatest achievements, obviously my marriage, my kids, I also want to say like a spiritual awakening, because I went from a year ago being an atheist, bought all the books, read the books, stacked them up, put them next to my husband's bed saying, he's got it all wrong, come to my side. And then I went through this incredible journey this past year to be spiritually awakened.
Wow. I didn't know that was.
And also having oh yeah.
Wow.
And to think that I didn't believe, wow, what was I going through? But I mean, I ran the agency that made millions of dollars, and we had massive profit margins and all that stuff. And that was kind of just like not even a chapter in my book. That was like a subsection in the chapter of my book. And that was a cool thing that I did. And I also burnt myself out doing that because I had both my babies in the same year as doing that.
Yeah.
But now I'm starting to see that like this work in the feminine, and I love that you said the quantum leap can only quantum leap from the feminine. Now I'm seeing that.
Yes. Yeah.
Not only seeing it, but feeling it. And it feels really good.
Oh, and you're in a quantum leap. I feel that energy from you. Like
Oh,
I totally feel that energy from you. Yeah. And to your point about those things that you're proudest of, where there were times where it was like, it felt like a grind, right? The way that I think
Totally.
about kind of that balance and blend of masculine and feminine is it's almost like childbirth, right? Where it's like the vast majority of pregnancy, there's not a lot of like, you're not pushing, right? The vast majority, it's like you're allowing in, you're taking the actions you need to take to prepare for what's coming. But your energy, you're not, for most of it, like most of the people, you're not freaking out. You're not like, am I pregnant? Am I not? I don't know. Is it coming? I don't, like all the things we do with our business, right? Am I going to make this money? I don't know. Is it coming? I don't know. You're preparing, but your energy is excited. You're anticipatory. You know it's coming. You know your good is coming. You know that baby's coming. And that's the majority of the energy for the majority of what you're creating. And then there is a period where you get to push, right?
Yeah.
There's a period of time. But if you tried to push too soon, or if you thought you had to push the whole time you were pregnant, not going to work. So it's kind of that blend where it's like, if we can learn to embody more of that energy in our businesses and in our lives, and we kind of renegotiate that balance of energy between feminine and masculine. Like, yeah, there's going to be times where you may be up all night preparing for an event, or you may be pushing through the last chapters of the book, but it's not grind, burnout, overwhelm, hustle energy. That's when we're there, we're in masculine, and that's not how we're going to quantum leap. So, yeah, it's really, really powerful.
I mean, oh yeah. I think of those moments when, okay, so going back to like the childbirth thing too, you're pregnant for, let's say 9 months, and maybe the average like labor and delivery is 24 hours, we'll say, like the worst of it. In the grand scheme of things, it's not that much time.
Right.
And you get to bring a human into the world. Yeah. It's pretty magical.
Yeah.
Yeah. With business, it's true. I actually pulled tarot card the other day. The message was patience.
Oh.
And I go, what do I do with this? And it's like, what the card is telling me is to shut up and just receive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I did. And I went about that day, the rest of that week, just being patient, not thinking I had to have an answer or a plan for every single thing I was doing.
Wow.
That some things sometimes can just unfold as they are because everything is by design.
Yes.
And we don't always have to know or predict the things that are unpredictable. Let it be. Yeah. And business can be that way too.
Yes. Oh my gosh, this is so good. And part of this too is like, how do we have unattached energy in our businesses, right? Which is also because people will say, I was doing an interview on this earlier this week where it's like, how do we get out of pressure or force on our sales calls? And how do we move into kind of that allowing energy and practicing non-attachment? I think it's way beyond just business. I think it's like the practice of life, right? Yes. But it comes from knowing who you are and remembering who you are, and focusing on the way that I kind of do it is, and you can redirect if you don't want to go down this path, but the way that I love to think about business and how do we remain patient and have non-attached energy but still manifest great results is knowing, number one, that your desires are green lights. So whatever your vision is, whatever your desire is, whatever it is that you're looking to create, call in, like know that that's given to you and through you for a reason, because it's going to bless not only you in your life, but so many more people around you that you can't even imagine. There have been kids' lives saved because of the women in our community coming in. And it's like, they came in, they followed a desire to make more money in their businesses. They didn't know that later they were going to get to use some of that money to help fund medical treatment, life-saving medical treatment for kids. So your desires are green lights. They're meant to flow through you and bless other people. And it's always kind of in the energy of this or something better, right? It's always like this or something even better. So I'm going to go in the direction of that dream. I'm going to follow the nudges. I'm going to take the aligned action. I'm going to prepare for the baby to come, right? And then simultaneously, I'm open to, if there's something better meant to come through, I'm open to that, right? I'm allowing that. So it's kind of this dance. Joe Dispenza talks about this dance between intention and surrender. And it's definitely something that I get to practice and learn every single day. But it's really powerful when we can do that. And that is the polarity too. That's masculine and feminine.
Yeah, you talk about this polarity a lot too.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so I want to talk about now, because when I think of scarcity, especially around like money mindset stuff, is that, I'm trying to understand where that comes from. Is it a feminine, masculine thing? Is it non-binary? What is that?
Yeah. This is a great question. And it's something that I think a lot of my life mission is to help people overcome that way of thinking, because it was so ingrained in me growing up. And I think it's pervasive, right? There's just so much messaging out there that we pick up on. Even and studies show now we pick up on these things when we're in the womb. A lot of this is epigenetics, like generationally. Scarcity patterns can be passed down if you're, it's like your grandparents were in the war and there was scarcity and there was hunger that actually affects the formation of your brain. And these things get passed down, and this trauma gets stored in our bodies as well from generation to generation. So, again, it's kind of pervasive in our culture, but it's not the truth. It doesn't have to be the truth. And this is something that I saw in the sales and business world for so long. And I experienced too, is this, I call it scarcity selling, which is like pressure or feeling like, when I make this amount of money, then I'll be successful, then I'll be worthy, then I'll be abundant. And we actually want to flip all of that on its head. So abundance selling is what happens when we tap into the truth that deep down at our core, we are abundance. We generate abundance from the inside out. It has nothing to do with a number in the bank. It's a feeling, it's an embodiment. I heard a great quote once that prosperity is what's left when all the money has been spent. So I want you to think about right now, if there was no money in the bank account, how would you feel? What would your feeling state be? And probably a lot of people, they'd be like, maybe someone's listening right now and they're there, right? So prosperity is what's left when all the money has been spent. And when we can study the laws of abundance and study the laws of prosperity and start to cultivate that energy within us, inside out, nothing to do with anything in the bank account or with our revenue this month, but what would it be like for me to show up in my business today as abundance? What would it look like for me to be prosperity today, to be prosperous? How would that type of person show up? How would they act? How would they think? What would their energy be, their embodiment be? When we start to practice that, we realize that that it was always an inside game all along. And I found in my own journey, as I practice that and focus on being that, the money flows, because money is always just going to mirror to you what you're thinking about yourself and how you're feeling about yourself. So money flows. But it's even beyond just the money. Opportunities flow, ideas flow, inspiration flows, right? Abundance isn't just about money in the bank. Prosperity is not just about money in the bank. It's about a shift in consciousness to notice that in our universe, everything is abundant. Try to go out and count the drops in the ocean, the water drops in the ocean. Try to count the blades of grass, even just like outside your home right now, if you're living in the suburbs. Everything is abundant.
Or if you have workers working on your house, how many are out there?
Abundance of workers, abundance of noise.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's actually the natural state of being. And we live in such an abundant world, and we also we have such power that if we focus on scarcity, we can experience an abundance of scarcity. So everything is in abundance. But
my spiritual teacher, taught me about the pointing thing. So when there's a problem in our lives, we tend to, take the finger and point to the problem. But most people look at the finger.
Yeah.
And they say, that's the issue. But they're not actually looking at what the problem is.
Yeah.
And the finger is us.
Yes.
It's always us.
Yeah.
If there's an issue, we've all faced it at some point. Like there's the worst things in our lives that could possibly happen to us and the best things.
Yeah.
But you think about like, even my husband as an example, or people that have, a sibling that were born and raised in the exact same environment. One person goes on and prospers and the other one doesn't and becomes an addict. They are the product of the exact same environment and upbringing. One person chose to disrupt that pattern.
Yes.
And make something new because they understood that abundance and prosperity is available to everybody. And it's not about the private jet or the fancy cars or the fancy trips, although those are nice to have. But it really does come back to if there was nothing left in your bank account. Yeah. How do you feel?
Yes. Yeah. That's it.
How do you feel? Are you up for the challenge? Right? Like, $0. Not and it's you could be in a good position now and say, well, I will just feel so great. But you don't know what it's like until you're there. But let's just say worst case scenario, it does happen. Are you actually emotionally prepared to be in that moment? And there's going to be those like $0. There's going to be those rock bottoms in our lives at different chapters in our book. And it's kind of like a metaphor for that.
Sure.
And what is that? Because to be the person that can be, as my spiritual therapist says, in solitary confinement for life and still find joy in those moments, that's ultimate enlightenment.
Ooh.
And that's really what we're trying to ascend to, is versions of that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And if I can just speak to one other aspect that you talked about there with the private jets are nice, right? For some people, like multiple homes are nice. Here's how I think about it. And I think this is also where we can experience separate feelings of separation and lack in our businesses or in our finances and not realize what's really going on. So a lot of people will set a goal and they'll say, I want to make X amount per month because then what? And they don't actually think, they're just like, that's what I should be going for. Like 10K months, 100K months, $1 million months, you name it. It's like, they see someone else doing it and they're like, I should be doing that. And when we set goals and approach goals that way, there's always lack. There's always separation. And it's also, I'm seeking it because then I think I'll be good enough, worthy, abundant, you name it, fill in the blank, right? And we don't consciously think about that a lot of times when we're setting goals. And when I used to set goals that way, and I would pursue money and I would chase it, and I would always feel distant and separate from it. And it was hard, and things felt hard from that energy. When I started to ask different questions, and this is how we ask it in our community now, is if you were on an island and no one was watching, no one was going to know, what would you actually want for your life? What would you want for your life? And tune into for you, for your incarnation, for who you are, like for Renee, for Elyse, for whoever listening. What do you like? What type of home do you love? What type of car do you love? What sort of lifestyle do you want? What sort of impact do you want? And when people start asking themselves these questions, it's like for some, that desire will come through for what a lot of people would consider a great deal of financial abundance, right? So the private plane, multiple homes, et cetera, like that really lights certain people up, and that's beautiful. For others, if they tune in, they may say, actually, for me, if I didn't feel like I needed to impress anyone or prove myself, like a lot of people are like, I love the laptop lifestyle. I want to go live in a country where it's like, it actually doesn't take a lot of money to live, but I want to go be in nature. I want to experience that. So abundance is different for everyone. And I think this is really important. And where we get it messed up is we make money itself the goal, and we actually put money in the wrong place. So in the masculine feminine dynamic, money is masculine. Money is meant to be the how of your vision, which is the feminine. So feminine is the vision for your life. And we want to connect with, what is my vision? Forget what I think is going to impress other people. Forget what my parents told me I needed to do growing up. But what's my vision for my life? And lead with the feminine and with the vision. And then from that place, we can reverse engineer and say, well, what amount of money is going to be required to bring that in? And then money is in its proper place, which is the how of our vision. And when we can make that dynamic shift in our relationship with money, it flows so much differently, so much better in our lives. It flows so differently because now it's in its proper place, and we're leading with the vision. We're allowing the money to come in and support. But you'll find that it's like you don't really feel like you're like seeking or striving after it anymore. And if you allow it to flow in to support that vision, you create a really beautiful dynamic with it.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because business is the opposite. We were taught it was the opposite.
Yeah.
Like you can feel good and feel proud about what it is you've achieved after you've made the money.
Oh, yeah.
After you've made the profits. And then people like you come in and say, well, that could be a way, but that's not the way.
Yeah.
And it makes me think of Danielle Laporte. During her early days of the Desire Map, the ultimate question she wanted to have people answer in a year was, how do you want to feel?
Yes.
And like, it gave us permission to actually double click on, how do I want to feel? Like no one's ever asked me that before. In running a business, how do I want to feel? Yeah. I want to feel ease and flow and creativity. I want to feel like the work I'm doing is the work that's coming through me from God, right? The stuff that I get into flow with.
Yes.
And business is always like, well, check your bank account, check the spreadsheets. What are the P&Ls saying? Yeah, it's important. But when we become obsessed with it is when it becomes a problem.
Yes.
I actually shared a reel yesterday about how I've noticed a handful, we'll say maybe like 2 or 3 women, entrepreneurs who have become very successful in the work they've been doing over the last like 5 years plus. And they look older. They look tired. They've gained weight. But yet they're sitting on this pedestal because they've created this next invention. They've created this next product that's just crushing it in the market, or a service, which always perpetuates the idea that in order to achieve that level of success, you have to sacrifice your temple, your body, in order to get there.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's true. I think that's clearly a mismanagement of someone's time, because you have the option to work out, to eat well, to sleep, and you can still create that value in the world.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is I think that the women are dipping too much into the masculine and staying there. Like they're stuck in that cycle because that's all they know.
Yes.
And that's familiar to them. That chaos and that like constant grind is comfortable for them.
Yeah.
You see this a lot?
Oh my God. Well, I used to live it. I understand.
Yeah, you did.
And again, there's just so much that's taught that like, this is the only way to be successful, that success means you're sacrificing everything at home. To your point, you have to sacrifice your health. And Michael Beckwith has a beautiful book. I don't know if you've read it, but it's called Life Visioning. And he talks about the different pillars. I think he calls them pillars of our life. And he talks about, the finances, health, career, relationship, but he calls our body temple. So how are you pouring into and sustaining and nurturing the body temple so that it can support you in your mission and in what you're doing? And I've gotten to shift my mindset on this so much, because in my 20s and even in my probably first half of my 30s, like I just didn't even think about it. It was like, oh, I can just get 2-3 hours of sleep a night. I can burn the candle on both ends, and it definitely showed, and it impacted my results. And so one of the best analogies that I've heard around feminine is like, we're taught, and a lot of people are like, ooh, this feels so much better, right? And so you can't pour from an empty cup. We know this. So your cup has to be full. But one of my mentors taught me that no, the cup doesn't just have to be full. You get to give from the overflow of your cup. So what would it look like for you to give from the overflow, not just from a full cup, like you get to just have a full cup for you, but then from the overflow, we're able to give more powerfully. And so, this isn't to diminish anyone's experience where they felt like they had to pull crazy hours or they were in a hyper masculine work environment. We got a lot of women like that in our community now. It's like, that's the only way I've been taught to achieve success. But I think there is, I love what you said earlier about like the earth is cracking up and cracking open and there's like feminine energy. I think there is a shift in consciousness that we're all being invited to right now that's designed to realign the energy in us and also in how we do things and how we operate into something that's sustainable and nurturing and that we can all continue to exist in. So yeah, it's really, really important stuff.
And I'm even seeing it with even somebody I might be married to who went from super grind, go, 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 and now tapping into that feminine.
Yeah.
And what that's doing for him as a leader, even in the household.
Wow.
Like we even connect the masculine energy to what is expected of people in a house. Isn't that crazy?
I haven't thought about it like that, but yeah.
Girl, you're feminine, so you have to do these things because this is what it's designed to be a mother.
Right.
And then because I'm the masculine, I'm a man, then here's the things I'm supposed to do. And it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So I remember someone saying not that long ago, maybe it was even my spiritual therapist. Her name is Stephanie, by the way. She's great. She does so much for us, but I don't know if it was her, but I was a little bit, maybe not overwhelmed, but I felt a little resentful towards the incredible success that my husband had had in his career. I had been on this roller coaster with him pretty much the whole time. And I was like catching like the spillage. I was doing all the extra things, the juggles, just knowing where the ship was headed.
Right.
And there was a point in our relationship where I never felt like I had deserved the things that we had, the flexibility that we had, the money in the bank, because I wasn't the one that physically did the labor to get there, which was also untrue.
Yeah.
I learned that I and people like me are the ones that attract wealth, while partners, significant others might create the wealth, and that the two are very important and they work together.
Yeah.
And this leads me to two last questions, but one I want to talk to you about too, about this ascension in relationships, because and this could be in intimate relationships, it could be in partnerships with somebody in business, even as a leader. What do we do when somebody is ascending in business or energetically, whatever, and the other person is either stagnant, stuck, or seemingly descending? Yeah. How do we create that balance?
It's such a great question. And we've had a lot of questions about this in our community recently. Not just recently, we've had them for a long time, but what often happens is women will come in and they'll start learning and studying and they're growing and they're ascending and they're like, they're quantum leaping. And not always, but sometimes their partner isn't on that same path. And what we don't realize is that subconsciously, if that's the case, we can actually inhibit our growth because we're afraid, if I grow too much, I'm going to leave them behind, or I won't have love, right? Or there's going to be more conflict in my relationship. And I don't claim to be an expert on this. I'll share. I actually had a beautiful conversation on my podcast earlier today with a relationship coach, and we were talking about this, and they gave some great feedback, and it was it mirrored kind of my take on it as well. But I think the easy thing to do in that scenario, if you feel like you're the one growing and your partner isn't, is to point the finger, like you said before, or blame, or be like, oh, you're wrong because you're not doing this and you're holding me back. And I think it's always about the work we do in ourselves, right? So it's a beautiful opportunity to look at what part of me, right, is committed to making someone else wrong, what part of me is needing to control someone else, what part of me is needing them to do something for me in order for me to feel safe or loved or accepted, right? There's a lot of questions we could do a deep dive into, but if we try to force something on our partner, I think anything that people feel forced into, they're going to resist, right? So what I've seen,
Yes.
and this has been kind of my own path in relationship, and what I encourage the members of our community to do is it's more of an invitation to grow alongside than you've got to do this or else. What will happen, what I see time and time again with the women in our community is if you hold your energy and you love and accept your partner for who they are and where they are on their journey. Now, I think part of this is we get to call each other up, right? So we do get to help each other rise. I'm not saying like condone bad behavior or this or that, but when you stay focused on your own growth plan and pattern, and you just hold an energy of invitation for that person to come along with you, I don't think you even have to say anything all the time. What will happen is they will start to get intrigued, and they will start to say, oh, what are you like? You seem so much calmer. You seem so much more peaceful. And then you're attracting all these great opportunities. What are you doing? Then from that place of open invitation, you can invite them, right, to come along with you in that. And they'll be far more receptive when we see this again and again. A lot of times it's like the woman will be leading with her development, and then a couple months later, her partner is like, okay, what you drinking? Because I got to do it too. We got to lead by example there as well. So
yeah.
Yeah.
We went to a couples retreat years ago that was coordinated by a gentleman named Philip McKernan. And one of the things he described, this metaphor about climbing a mountain, is that he's like a successful entrepreneur, and his wife, I believe she stayed home with the kids. I think she supported him in his business. She was a psychiatrist, or I don't even remember. But from my recollection, it was a lot of supporting him. And he saw that, I recognized that, and he was climbing this mountain. He's like, we're doing this together, babe. So he was pulling her up this mountain. Yeah. And he's like, why is it so hard to climb this mountain when I'm pulling her? Yeah, it's going to be harder. You're carrying the weight of somebody else. Yeah. And it's not even her mountain to go up. So first of all, you're pulling her, and it's not her mountain. So the resentment is huge. Wow. What he realized was that she's climbing her own mountain. And maybe she'll get to the top, maybe she won't. But it's his duty as a partner to support her climb of her mountain. Wow. And I thought that was beautiful, because we look at our partners and like, I don't see anywhere in your resume where you wanted to be a doctor, Elyse, but your man does, right? And you without a doubt, are supporting each other in ways that is so beautiful. Like what you've had to do in the last year to uproot your lives, to move states, to continue with your business and support him in going to med school, and then all this stuff. It's like this beautiful synergy of here's our dreams, let's support each other. And there's probably days where you're like, oh my God, get me out of here.
Yes.
So bad. But you have your own mountains to conquer.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. It's beautiful. And it's a learning journey in my own life, right? It's like I get to keep diving deeper, but I think there's so much freedom that opens up in relationship when we allow each other to be who we are meant to be. And then we come to each other in that energy of support rather than, trying to take someone down. So yeah, it's really powerful.
Okay. So one last question for you. And I've asked you this one 3 years ago, but let's just see how different it is today. Okay. When I ask you what it means to be a wild woman, what is that to you?
So we went to a concert this weekend. We saw Gypsy Kings in New Jersey. And I'm a big Gypsy Kings person. It was like me and a bunch of people twice my age. It was great. But the very last song that he sang, and the song is in Italian, but the American translation is the song "I Did It My Way." And it was this beautiful moment. I actually got a little bit teary-eyed because I thought, that's what I want to say about my life. I did it my way. I followed my intuition. I followed my guidance. I allowed that to lead me, and I made my own rules and I charted my own path about my life. So that's what it means to me to be a wild woman.
I love it. So if people want to go online to find you, where can they go?
Thank you. Yeah. ElyseArcher.com/4quadrants is a great free training that someone can take to quantum leap their sales. And then I'm at Elyse Archer on all places, and I'd love to connect.
Yay. Well, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Renee. Appreciate you.